In this series of video lessons, we're going to extend your knowledge of JavaScript. So we are assuming you have some JavaScript knowledge, and we're going to extend it with certain features. First task that we're going to do is we're going to create a simple web page with some HTML elements on it to allow the user to input two pieces of information: the vehicle manufacturer, and that will then therefore be a text box, and the date of registration of the vehicle, which again will be an input box, but it won't be text, it'll be a date. Then we want to create a JavaScript function that will read the values from the input elements and add them to variables or to constants. We will then calculate the age of the vehicle. We will then display a message that has the manufacturer name and the vehicle age. And you can see that on the screen, on the screenshots on the right-hand side at the bottom. To run the function, we're going to have a button which, when clicked, executes the function, and therefore the function will read the information in the two inputs and then do all the calculations. In this case, we don't need any CSS styling. We just want to concentrate on JavaScript. So we're going to put our JavaScript within a HTML page. So the HTML page, as you can see here, will have a heading, H1. Then it will have a label, and the label is associated with the input type below. And the way that we connect those is we have label for vehicle manufacturer, and vehicle manufacturer links with the ID in the input type. Then we're going to have another label, and the label is for vehicle registration date. And we have an input type below, which has an ID of vehicle registration date. So here are our labels, 1, 2, and they are associated with different input types. And the first input type is text, and the second input type is date. At the moment, we're not worried about the name attribute, but we've just kept the name attribute here the same as the ID for both inputs. The button then has an on click, and when we click the button, it will execute a function called calculate vehicle age, and we will create that next. So the button will have some text that says calculate vehicle age. And then we're going to have two divs with an ID of message 1 and an ID of message 2, where we can put out some information to those. So now let's look at the calculate vehicle age function. So the JavaScript has to go inside HTML, we said. So it goes inside a script tag, end script. So we have a script and an end script. Then we have a function which is called calculate vehicle age. We have our open curly brace and our closed curly brace. So we are now going to create a constant called vehicle manufacturer. And to get the details of what's inside that, we need to find the element on the web page. So if we go back, we'll see that we had an ID of vehicle manufacturer for our input. So document, which is really your HTML page, dot get element by ID, vehicle manufacturer. So we've now found the vehicle manufacturer element, but we want to get the value that was put into that. And then that becomes the constant vehicle manufacturer. We do exactly the same thing for age. So we do registration date equals document.get element by ID, vehicle registration date. And again, if we go back to our HTML, we see that we gave the date input an ID of vehicle registration date. So once we've got the two values, then we're going to look at our computer and see what is today's date. And we'll set that into a variable called, or a constant called, current year. So we say current year equals date.now. And then we go another constant, registration year equals new date, registration date. So the registration date was what we read in from the value, and we make that into a date. And then we do a little bit of math, and we go the age of the vehicle equals math.round current year minus the registration year divided by this number, and that will give me the age of the vehicle. So here we're saying message one dot inner HTML. I want to set the text basically of it, or the inner HTML, to be, and this is the string interpolation, the backtick starting here and ending over here. And we're saying we want year and then the variable vehicle manufacturer. Because it's a variable then, we're putting it in the curly brace, and we're also putting a $sign in front of it. So your vehicle manufacturer was registered on the date. And then we're saying for message two, inner HTML, for your insurance quote, we take your vehicle age as, and this is a variable, so again it goes inside the curly brace and the $sign, years old. So in Visual Studio Code, I have already created a folder, and inside the folder I have created HTML, CSS, and JavaScript folders. So we will create our file inside the JavaScript folder. Even though it's HTML, we could put it in the HTML folder if we want, but for now, we'll just put it inside JavaScript. So we will right click, new file, and we'll call it JavaScript Task1.html. In Visual Studio Code, to get our HTML, we simply put an exclamation mark, press enter. Now we can start to add our code. So the first thing we saw was we wanted to add the H1. So add H1, and that can be anything you wanted to say. I just said number one, JavaScript calculate vehicle age. And then we wanted to put in the label, and we want to put in the input with it. So here we have label for vehicle manufacturer, and we said that below we have an input type is text, and the ID was vehicle manufacturer. So these two are associated with each other through the label for and the input type with an ID. Then we do the same thing, but if we're going to put another label in here, what we may want to do is group these in some way so that later we may style them. So we can put a P tag around the label and the input. Now this could have been any tag, and it will allow us to do some styling or do some other things with it at a later stage. So again, for the next one, I'm going to put in the P tag, and then I'm going to put in my label and my input. And then again, we put in our P tag and our NP tag. And in this case now, I want to put in our button. So the button doesn't have a label like the first two. This text here will be what will be inside the button. And the last thing then we wanted to do was we wanted to create the two divs for our message. So our message one and our message two. And that is our code. So this is the code of the H1, then a block, and the block has got a label, and the label says vehicle manufacturer, and the label is for vehicle manufacturer. And that looks for an element which is an ID of vehicle manufacturer, which is then this one, which says input type equals text, and the ID is vehicle manufacturer, and the name this vehicle manufacturer. Then we repeat the same process essentially for the second element, but this element has a type of date. So it'll not be where you type in, it'll be where you will select. Then we have our on click, which runs this method whenever we create the method. So now that we have our HTML, we want to put in a script, and a script will go inside the head. So we'll put script tag. And end script. And this is where we will put our JavaScript code. Right, while I'm here, I can change that title just to say Task1. So inside the script is where we will declare our function. So our function will start with function, and then we call it calculate vehicle age. Now, this is doing more than calculate the vehicle age, but I've just called it that. We can call this whatever we want. It's a function. So we put open round brackets, close round brackets, and then open curly brace and close curly brace. So now what we want to do is we want to get our two elements from the HTML using their ID. So document.get element by ID, vehicle manufacturer, find that, get its value, and assign it to a variable or constant called vehicle manufacturer. And then we'll do exactly the same thing for the second one. And the second one was the get element by ID, vehicle registration date. So now we have the two values. We can do our mathematic or our processing or whatever else we want to call it. But the first thing we need to do is get the date from our computer. So const current year equals date dot now. So what is the date now? And then after that, we want to convert the date that we put for the registration. So what did the person put in here? Well, we want to convert it to a new date. So now we have our two dates, which are the current year and the registration year. We should then be able to do some maths with that. So we can subtract the two, divide it by this figure here, and then round it up, and that will give me the age of my vehicle in years. And then what we want is to display two pieces of information, one at message 1. So message 1 was down here. That's an ID. And we say we want the inner HTML to be, as we saw, your whatever that value is, which is this thing up here, whatever you typed in, was registered on registration date and registration date here. So that's the two things that were typed in by the user. And the second one was we want them to put in for message 2 the inner HTML, and it's going to say for your insurance code, etc., age of vehicle. And we can see here, age of vehicle is where we take the current year, and away from that, we take the registration year, divide it by a certain number, and do a round, and that should then be all of our code. Just put a semicolon there. Just need to put the backtick in at this part. So what we want to do now then is save the document. So go to File and Save. I have auto save on, so it's automatically saved, but I can still click Save. So we have now our JavaScript inside the HTML. When the user clicks on this button, it will execute this code and should do all of what we want. So how can we do or show this? We can right click, and if you have open in default browser or open in live server, then you could do it that way. But I will just go back to where I created this on my desktop, and I created a folder called JavaScript Video Lessons And then inside I had 3 folders, and I created this inside the JavaScript. So I should now see the file, and because I put .html, it's associated with a browser. I can right click on that and go open with, and then I can pick whatever I want, Chrome or Edge. I'm going to pick Chrome. And here we see this one. Here we see our code. This is our H1. Here is the vehicle manufacturer. So if I type in, say, Ford, and then I pick a date, let's say I pick here. And when I click on calculate, that will execute the function. And we should see your Ford was registered on the 1st of the 3rd, 2023. And for your insurance code, we take the age of your vehicle to be 0. But if I went back here and change this to a different year, say, and I pick June, and I pick 10th or whatever, and then calculate, you can see that the date has changed, and we can see that the age is 3. But just to emphasize once again, when we click on the label, you can see that it associated itself with this because of the label form, and the same with date of registration. So anytime we make changes in here, so say we have already, and we change this date, right, 14, we'll pick December, and let's pick 25th, and calculate, we can see the date changes, and we can see that the age changes as well. We'll go back into our code. Now, obviously, what you would like to do is move the JavaScript code into a JavaScript file on its own, and then associate the HTML with that file, and we will put the HTML file into the HTML folder. But we're interested in JavaScript. This is our JavaScript that does all our working out for us. So that is the end of task 1.